Hello Tech Pros, episode 233.
Have a plan, say no, execute on it, and turn off all the distractions. When I'm working on something, a lot of times I'll just go into another room and I'll work on paper with pen.
Welcome to the podcast where every day of the week we publish another conversation exploring the anxieties, challenges, and opportunities that technical professionals and entrepreneurs face when building their career, building their products, and building their business. There are a lot of shows that focus on the nuts and bolts of technology, but this podcast is not one of them. This is about the people behind the tech industry and the mindsets and skill sets they developed that led to their success. You can learn more about this podcast and our guests at hellotechpros.com, and I invite you to read my personal story of overcoming social anxiety at anxietynerd.com. All right, let's get started. Hello, Tech Pros. This is Chad Bostic, and I'm excited to introduce our featured guest today, Thor Conklin. Happy Tuesday, Thor.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me on.
You bet, man. Are you prepared to be productive?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Thor Conklin is a business owner, author, executive coach, and content-driven podcaster. 2016 marks his 16th year as an entrepreneur. Dude, congratulations for that. Thor is gritty, experienced, and accessible as he brings to bear what holds people back from realizing their full potential. Through his latest venture, Peak Performance Nation, he teaches the tools, tips, tricks, and strategies necessary to be a peak performer. He qualifies the psychology of success in one word: execution. And as he says, nothing you've learned matters unless you can execute. Dude, I love that. I love that phrase, man. I love that psychology. It's all about getting it done. I had been a wantrepreneur for like 15 years and was not executing. And it was only until I really got serious and launched Hello Tech Pros where I started executing on my entrepreneurship ideas. And yeah, you're absolutely right, dude. It's all about execution. That's
just what I found in my businesses. You know, and what drove me to this area is I just wasn't good at it. I was good at it sometimes and not good at it other times. And I'm like, I've got to figure this stuff out for me.
Absolutely. It's so tough until you just start getting in there and working on it. So 16 years as an entrepreneur, man, you're rocking and rolling. You've been doing this for a while. Huh?
You know, I have. At this point, I think I'm unemployable. And there were some great successes.
That's a good place to be.
Exactly. I don't know who would have me. It's been a really interesting journey, and there's been some great successes along the way, and there's been some epic failures. So I'm just keeping at it, and I learn every single day.
Well, maybe we can talk about a little bit of both of those, like pick and choose a couple of examples of those great successes and some of those critical failures. Because, Thor, I always ask my guest on Tuesday about Productivity Tuesday, about a time in your life when you were completely unproductive, right? So you've got 16 years as an entrepreneur. You've been doing lots of stuff. You have Peak Performance Nation teaching people how to execute and be that peak performer. But I'm guessing that you're not a cyborg. You're actually a human, just like me. And you have had at least a time or two where you were completely unproductive. So do you have an example you could share with us?
Yeah, no, absolutely. You know, they call us human beings, not human doers. So it's about being. A great example is yesterday. We just had the presidential election, and I did not see the results coming out the way they did, as did a lot of my cohorts. And it was interesting. I was kind of taken back. And yesterday was one unproductive day. So there's a great example. I teach productivity, and yesterday I passed or failed quite miserably.
So why do you think that happens to us, where even when we are extremely highly productive in most areas of our life, most times of our life, we just have something that can just completely derail us from the objectives that we're trying to achieve?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, it happens to all of us. The amount of information and everything coming at us every single day in all sorts of forms are vying for our attention. And it's really difficult to block everything out. You know, when you have a racehorse, what do a lot of trainers do when they put their horse on the track? They put blinders on them. And the reason is they don't want them focused on the other horses. They want them focused on that one thing down the track, that finish line. And as entrepreneurs, it's so easy to get off track. I mean, emails, phone calls, personal things, everything, the dings, the dongs, the bells, the whistles. I mean, notifications on your phone, I've turned off all my notifications. Just I could see them if I look at my phone, but all that ringing and everything, every time something like that happens, you're distracted. You've got to eliminate those distractions.
Yeah, I found that, a lot of the social media things, a lot of the apps that I have on my phone, I really, if I turn off all the notifications, I might look at them once or twice a week. And when I do, it's just for a few minutes. As opposed to if I have those notifications turned on, it's every 3 or 4 minutes. I'm looking at my Apple Watch or I'm pulling out my phone. And then I go down to this black hole that sucks all the time out of my life that I will never, ever get back just because there was a little red circle that said 1, and I'm like, I wonder what that 1 is. I have to know. Why is there I have to, what is it? And then all of a sudden I'm looking at cat videos, dude, and it's
yeah, it happens to all of us. And as business people, what are we trying to do? We're trying to get our message in front of other people. We want people to listen to this podcast. So we want our bell to go off, our whistle to go off, and we want to tell other people, stop what you're doing and pay attention to us. So it's a little hypocritical, but it's just the way the world is. It's tough to get somebody's attention. There's so much noise out there.
There's so much noise out there, and when you do get their attention, how long are you going to keep it, right? So there are probably a lot of people who are listening to this podcast right now that had listened to the first 4 minutes, and then they've already tuned out because they're like, something else, a new shiny object or something else that they want. And that's okay. That's cool.
Well,
right?
but they're going to help
the people that we're going to
miss the part at the end. That special part we were talking about.
Exactly, that super secret thing that's going to change their life. They're going to miss that. So the rest of you guys and gals who are sticking around, dude, stick around to the end. You don't want to miss that. Absolutely. So Thor, as a leader and guider in Peak Performance Nation, like what are some of the obstacles that you see that these entrepreneurs, these technical professionals, that people need to overcome in order to be that peak performer?
Yeah, if I can do this, I'd like to give you some tools and strategies on how to eliminate the distractions and be more productive. So I'm just going to run through these things really quick because I don't really care about the problem. I want to give you the solutions. So let's just run through these real quick. The first and foremost is have a clean environment. When you sit down to do whatever you're going to be doing, make sure your environment is clean. Whether it's a clean desk, whatever that is, make sure there's very little distractions. Turn off your cell phone. I'm a big proponent of using block time, and that is I use my calendar to dictate what I'm going to do next, and I treat a meeting with myself to work on a project just like a meeting with an outside client or prospect. It's scheduled, and I run it for maybe 30 minutes, 50 minutes, and that's it. That's all I'm doing. Because if you don't have clarity on what you're working on right now, something else is going to creep in. Another big strategy that I use is learning to say no. You've got to have your vision of what you're trying to create, first and foremost in your life, and then in your business. And make sure those two don't conflict with each other. That's a big thing that I see with a lot of entrepreneurs. They want, this notion of you can have everything is a bunch of BS, in my opinion. You can have anything you want, but you can't have everything. You've got to make choices, and you've got to say no.
As soon as you say learning to say no, I almost said yes. It seemed a little counter.
Yeah.
So yes, no, yes.
Say yes to no. And it's
yes
tough.
To no.
It's funny. I teach my clients. I said, stop saying you can't. They run around, I can't do that, I can't do that, because it's a lie. A lot of times you could do it, but what you're really saying to the other person is, I don't want to do that. I won't do that. It's not as nice. It's not politically as correct as I can't, but your brain knows the difference between can't and don't. Say you don't. Don't resist, eating the chocolate chip cookie at night. Say, I can't do that. Say, I don't eat chocolate chip cookies. Much easier. Much easier to be productive. Eliminate the conflicts. And what I mean about this is we all have different areas of our life that we focus on. We've got our health, we've got our nutrition, we've got our relationships, we have our business, we have our family. And so often what we want in each of those categories, I call them AOLs, areas of life, they conflict with each other. And when you're at the office, you're like, oh, I really should be home with the kids. Or when you're home with the kids, it's like, I really got to get some emails. And you start getting pulled in different directions. You are not going to be productive if you're pulled in different directions. As entrepreneurs, we do way too much. We try to put way too much on our calendar, and we just get overwhelmed. Really start to narrow that down, and it goes back to the no. Multitasking is a myth. Do not multitask. There's some great stuff. I saw a video by Dave Crenshaw that has a book out about multitasking. It's really what you're doing is switching quickly from one thing to another. Don't do it. The only thing that I do suggest that's kind of multitasking is I call it dot time, doing other things. If you're driving your car and you want to listen to a podcast, great. If you're working out and you want to listen to a podcast, great. But if you're doing emails, do emails. If you're doing a project, do the project.
Cool, man.
Calendar. Man, if you don't have a calendar, you're not using a calendar, stop. Stop the podcast right now. And you've got to have something that manages your life. And it's got to start with a calendar. You got to plan your days, your weeks, your years. And it starts before you go to bed, in my opinion. I know exactly what's going to happen tomorrow before I go to bed tonight. I rearrange, I move some things around. But when I wake up, I'm not going, what do I do now? Oh, look, cat video. No, it's about having the plan already set. Waking up early. I believe that if you want to be super productive, you got to wake up early. And that starts with going to bed at night early. It's all connected.
Mm-hmm.
So those are a couple quick things that I use in my life and I teach my clients for productivity. The center of what I do really with all of my clients starts at a thing that I call the ultimate success map. And that is first figuring out what you want. Going back to in your life, figure that out. And then make sure your business or your career supports your vision for your life. So often I see entrepreneurs running around with this idea, okay, I want to do this. And then it conflicts with everything else and they're miserable. They can get to their objectives and then they're just not happy. Sorry, did you have a question? I didn't want to. I could go on for 3 hours.
Keep rolling, man. Preach it. The choir is listening. We are listening. You are on a roll, dude. Just keep going.
Good. Just sound the alarm and say, that's it. Stop talking. The next is, after you figure out what you want, come up with an efficient and an effective plan. A simple plan. Something that's going to get you to your objective. And by the way, when you figure out where you want to go, you got to figure out first where you are currently. If you come up with a plan and you're not honest with yourself of where you are currently, it's going to be a different map. You know, look, I live in Atlanta. And if I was to go to Chicago, I'd have to head north and then a little bit west. But if I just gave out the directions that, hey, anybody wants to get to Chicago, you've got to go north. Well, the people in Calgary would have a difficult time getting to Chicago because the starting point is different. And as entrepreneurs, some of us, and I think I suffered from this at some point in my life, I don't anymore because I know the harm that it can cause is get real with yourself. If you're making $5,000 a month and you want to get to $100,000, say you started at 5. Don't exaggerate it and say, oh, I'm really at 40. It's a different plan. So tell the truth. You got to make a decision. And deciding is just not enough. You've got to commit to it. And I liken this. I went skydiving a few years ago, and I said I decided I want to go skydiving. I got on the plane. I still decided that I wanted to go skydiving, but it wasn't until I left the plane that I was committed. There was no going back. As much as I wanted to, there was no going back. So, a lot of people are interested in success. A lot of people are interested in becoming more, and interested isn't enough. Deciding is not enough. You've got to be committed. And then you've got to take action. But before you start taking action, and this leads into a little bit of what you were talking about, is I really look into the belief systems, because it's the belief systems many times that stop us, that get in the way. We've sabotaged our success. And it's little things that you don't see sometimes, those little beliefs that were instilled as a child or as an adult that get in the way of our success. We're not good enough. We don't deserve this. Money's evil, whatever it is. And it's funny because some of these we know consciously, but so many we don't. And I see entrepreneurs all the time. They run into an obstacle. And what do? Hit the gas. We just plow down harder. Meanwhile, we've got somebody in the back of the car with an anchor dragging, or you've got your foot on the brake by accident, and we're trying to push through it. And I'm all for pushing through things. But before we start pushing through it, let's make sure we've got the foot off the brake. And those obstacles, and sometimes they show up as belief systems, can be a big hazard, big thing that stops us. Next is action. That's simple, right? We've got to take massive action towards our results. And then we've got time. And so many people get so close to their goals and they just stop. They stop short of the finish line. They give up. They take their foot off the gas, and then they get distracted. And they end up looking, there's a squirrel. There's a shiny penny. Look at that business opportunity. And it gets back to saying no. I'm presented with business opportunities all the time. And I used to go, that'd be cool. Let me try this. And I'd start dividing my time. Now it's, like who hasn't been there, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's so difficult. But when you got a clear vision and you learn how to say no, you don't get distracted. And they go into my sometime maybe file. I file them away. Hey, maybe someday I might do this. So I've captured it, but I'm not going to spend any time on it. So that's just kind of my map from going from figuring out what you want to actually getting it. You go through those steps.
That's awesome. I love that map. I love the 7 tips that you shared on how to be less distracted. I love your ultimate success map to get what you want in life. And I resonate with so many of these, starting at the end and kind of working my way back, starting with those anchors and those parking brakes that I have had in my own life for so many years and just completely oblivious to it. For me, it has been social anxiety. And I want to achieve so many things in life. And I'm absolutely terrified of having a conversation with anyone, right? I am absolutely terrified of going out in public and like meeting new people and looking them in the eye and saying hello, because it comes out, hello, right? Yeah. And so what product am I going to launch? What business am I going to start? Dude, none of that is going to happen if I can't look at my customers and I can talk to them about their problems, and I can talk to them about, how I can help them, and I can get on. And so that's exactly why I started this podcast, is because I've had so much success overcoming that anchor that now, I want to push full speed ahead now on launching this podcast, because I want to meet more people every day. I want to have great conversations with people like Thor, and I want to expand my social network. And I couldn't have done that until I got rid of a lot of that anchor, a lot of that parking brake that was holding me back for so many years.
Yeah, I mean, well said. And look, everything that you want is outside of your comfort zone. If you're not comfortable in doing it, well, guess what? That's exactly the direction you should be moving in. And it's like exercise, right? I mean, how do you get big muscles? You go into the gym and you do the difficult task over and over again, repetitive. If you're not good at speaking to people in public, just start doing it. And you're probably going to be lousy at it at first, right? All you got to do is listen to my first podcast and go, oh, that was bad. Literally, how I started my podcasting career and had the nerve to, because I wanted it to be great, right? I wanted my voice to be good. I wanted the content to be good. I wanted everything to be good. And I went to EO Fire, John Dumas, which is a phenomenal, if you haven't checked out his podcast, go check it out. And I went to his first episode, and it's hilarious. John, I'm sorry. I went to his first episode. I'm like, oh, man, that's horrible. I was like, he's awesome now. I'm like, guess what? We all have to start somewhere.
He has like 4 years of experience.
Exactly.
He has thousands of episodes that he's published, so he's gotten a lot good at it. So yeah, if you go back and look at any of our journeys, regardless of if we're software developers or we're engineers or we're podcasters or entrepreneurs or salespeople, at the very, very beginning, we weren't hitting home runs the first time we stepped to the plate, right? We were striking out left and right, but we were getting practice and we were learning the mechanics, we were learning the style, we were learning how to do it. But you gotta get rid of those belief systems that say I'm no good at this until you actually try it and give it some good, honest, exercise. Like you said, you got to go to the gym and you got to work on it. You got to practice at it to find out, first of all, if you like it. Second of all, are you good at it?
Yeah, and when you're vulnerable, I mean, people are not going to give you a lot of flack about it. Just, be honest and open. It was interesting. and I'm not political by any means. I listened to Hillary's concession speech, and I'm like, oh my God, it was so heartfelt, so gracious, so connecting. I was like, if she did that during the during the run to the presidency, she may have won. I was like, I've never seen her talk so human. And it's like, right. We get into this mode of, well, I've got to look this way, I've got to do this, and it's got to be perfect. No, just show people who you are. Be real, be raw, be vulnerable.
Man, that's so powerful, because I think when I talk to people who are peak performers or people who are trying to be peak performers, it's all about those tactics, right? So going back to those 7 things, the 7 ways to be less distracted, if I could speak in English, that you shared at the beginning of the podcast, right? They want to know more of those. Okay, so I need to turn off my notifications. I need to block time on my calendar. I need to do da-da-da-da-da. And they're trying to get all these tips and tactics, which are awesome. They're fantastic, and they will definitely help. But if you have these anchors in place, if you're not vulnerable, if you're not really open to who you are, just as you said, Thor, like, you're going to be holding yourself back, and you're never going to be at that peak performance. At least that's what I've discovered about myself.
Yeah, and you know what plays a big key factor in this is accountability. Find someone around you that can hold you accountable. I do a fitness shoot every 3 to 4 months, and I don't like doing it. But what it does is it keeps me accountable, because I said I made a commitment to changing my health and my fitness. And I made a proclamation, went out on Facebook, told the world. And if you went to my Facebook page, you would see a progression of where I started. And it wasn't pretty. I mean, I've got a nasty picture there when I started. And I don't want to go back there. And I've got to get in front of the camera every 4 months. And it's not easy, because I know people are looking, and I know people are counting on me to be the example. So I put that pressure on me. And guess what? I'm productive in that area now, because there's more at stake than just me.
So Thor, when let's take a quick break. When we come back, let's talk more about how we're getting over these belief systems. Like, where are the belief systems coming from? Because I really want to dive into that. Like, it sounds like a lot of psychology mumbo jumbo, right? Especially since we're talking to technical professionals who are very analytical, right? Very science driven. But I think there's something to be said about the things that we learn as a kid and how that can hold us back as an adult. Let's talk about that in a quick second. But first, we'll take a break and thank our sponsors. Is your website ugly? I mean, really ugly? Did your website fall out of the ugly source code repo and hit every branch on the way down? Is your website so ugly that Apple won't display it in Safari due to their human interface guidelines? Is your website so ugly that your CSS has no style? Is your website so ugly that even your mama won't bookmark it? I know a lot about ugly websites because, sadly, I've been building them my entire career. I've always made excuses like, it should be the functionality over the design. But what I should have been saying all along is, look, I'm colorblind, I'm style challenged, and I have no business building web front ends whatsoever. Luckily, I've worked with some amazing designers that have helped turn my MVP OS, or minimum viable piece of into websites that real humans want to use. And it's not just about complementary colors and rad logo designs. It's about connecting with your website visitors on an emotional level that engages the stickiness centers in their brain and makes them more curious to read about your products and then follow your call to actions. I invite you to check out the awesome tips that website designer Veronica Curran gave me for the Hello Tech Pros website and get your free personalized website makeover consultation video by visiting hellougly.site.com. Hello Ugly Site is definitely ugly, but your website doesn't have to be. Go to hellougly.site.com. That's hellougly.site.com. Since publishing episode 141 on how social anxiety disorder and depression nearly cost me my life, I've gotten tons of feedback from people who are struggling with similar issues. Anxiety is a big deal. In my opinion, it's not discussed enough, especially in the tech industry, where a lot of us hide from our anxieties behind the computer screen instead of learning how to address them. That's why I started writing a book on the subject. If you are struggling with anxiety or know someone who is, please visit anxietynerd.com. You can sign up to read Chapter 1 for free, as well as receive regular progress details so that you can hold me accountable to get this book published. anxietynerd.com. Okay, we're back with Thor Conklin. Thor is a business owner, executive coach, and podcaster who runs Peak Performance Nation, where he teaches the tools, tips, tricks, and strategies necessary to be a peak performer. We've been talking to Thor about, oh my gosh, so many things. 7 ways to be less distracted, the ultimate success map to get what you want in life, and how to support your business. And Thor, one of the things that you mentioned in there that really resonated with me is some of the habits and beliefs that we learned as a child, as a young person, that are now holding us back as an adult. So can you touch a little bit onto that? Like, where does that come from, and why is that so critical?
Yeah, I could spend in the next 4 hours, but I know we don't have 4 hours. Let me.
How about like 8 minutes?
Excellent. I can do that. So let's put this in terms of tech, because most of your audience is tech.
Yep.
When we have a computer, it has an operating system, and that operating system then has software that works with it, is installed into the computer. And then based on what you type into the keyboard, into that software, into that operating system, it's going to spit out a response. Correct?
Right.
Your brain acts the same way. Your brain is nothing more than a computer. If I tell you, do not think of a pink elephant, what's the first thing you think of?
It's in my. It's too late.
It's too late.
It's already there.
It's not
I can see him.
Right. If I say 2 + 2, you already have the answer.
Yep.
Your brain is a computer. The problem is that no one gave us an operating manual. And our computer was loaded with software way back when. And we've been running the same sort of operating system, the same sort of software for years and years and years. Apple this year alone updated their operating system how many times? It's 9.
A bazillion.
9 times.
Every night when I go to bed.
Yeah, exactly. It's been 9 times this year. Why did Apple update their operating system 9 times? Because they found things that weren't right. They found things that could have been better, and they're tweaking it and making it better. As humans, most go through life their entire lives without ever upgrading their operating system or learning how to program their mind. And it's very easily done. I'll give you an example. When I go to bed, when I wake up in the morning, one of the first things I say to myself, I ask myself questions. That's how we trigger our brain, is questions. So I'll say, what went great yesterday? And I'll write it down with paper. I know the tech people are sitting there and go, no paper, I'm using technology. That's fine. Put it wherever you want to. There's some interesting science that around when you actually use a pen and paper in writing, it locks in the understanding of that harder than it does through technology. But use technology if you want to. But I ask myself, what went well yesterday? And I write that down. And I say, what could have been better? What could have gone better? And I write those things down. And then I say, what got in the way? And I identify those things. And every day things get in the way, right? And then I simply say, what can I do better today? And how can I eliminate those obstacles? I'm asking questions in order to train my mind to start to think and look for these things. And what happens is you end up with better and better questions.
So I've got a buddy that we recorded a podcast episode way early on, and he's a computer science major, right? Yep. He is he developed some artificial intelligence, and he told a story about how, I think it was Microsoft, developed some AI, and they used the Twitter feeds, just the public Twitter feeds, to program this robot on what to say and how to answer questions. And what they discovered was Twitter's like the cesspool of knowledge, right? It's like horrible, mean stuff. And so their little AI robot became very dirty. It started cursing. It started being very racist. It started being just extremely horrible little dirty robot. And they're like, oh my gosh, we got to shut this off. Well, to me, it's like, that's the early some of the data that we were fed when we were children, when we were growing up, right? That's like old data that maybe maybe it's like the cesspool like Twitter, right? And we need to kind of get rid of that. So how do we start reprogramming themselves and start asking ourselves those questions like you were talking about of what's a better thing, right? We don't want to answer like this. So how do we want to answer, right? How do we want to think, and what type of actions do we want to, or behaviors do we want to observe going forward? And that may mean kind of deleting all of our old data, deleting some of the history and the habits and the mindsets that we had when we were growing up, and kind of starting from scratch. Does that make sense?
Yes. And look, what happens is when we have these old beliefs, first of all, we have the conscious ones and the unconscious ones. So the conscious ones are pretty easy to figure out. The unconscious ones are more difficult. You've got to get with someone, get with a coach, get with someone that can elicit these beliefs out of you, and then you can figure out how to change them. Here's the thing with beliefs. Are there things that we believed when we were younger that we found out later aren't true? Easter Bunny, Santa Claus, Tooth Fairy. So there are things that we believe to be true that are not true. The way we make things concrete is through references. If we believe that, I had a client recently that believed that all hot women were mean. That was his belief. And he didn't even know he had it. But he started showing up every time he saw someone that was very attractive. His mind said, there's one, that's the mean one. And then he responded to her in what manner? A mean manner. Wow. And the response that he got back was mean.
Probably pretty mean, right?
So he was building references based on his already preconceived notion of what was going to happen. And every time he engaged in one of those conversations, he got reinforcement. So the first step is if there's a belief system that is not supporting you, the first one that I always ask my clients is it really true? Because what they'll say is, we'll go back to that example. All hot women are mean. I'm like, really? Is that true? And they're like, yes, it is. I'm like, Bob, come on. Really? Well, maybe not. Well, maybe not or not. They're like, no. But the ones I meet are, and they go into this story. What happens with our beliefs is they become part of our identity. And it's very important for us as humans to remain consistent to our identity. Mm-hmm. And we don't know which ones of those beliefs are actually supporting us or not supporting us in many cases. And it dictates our behavior. So the most important thing, if there is a belief system that is not supporting you, one is you need to wipe it out. And there's several techniques. If anyone's struggling with this, I'll give my information at the end. I'd be more than happy to spend 10 minutes with you and you can knock that right out. So there's some tools and techniques that would be hard to describe on the show to knock out a limiting belief. And then we've got to figure out something to replace it with. And what happens is so many people end up eliminating things that they don't want to do, and then they leave space. And what happens when space is created? Things just kind of fill the space, don't they?
That's right. Yep.
And
new things come up.
Right. And a lot of times it's done unconsciously. So it's about eliminating that limiting belief and then filling it with a belief that supports you and moves you closer to your goals.
Dude, I could nerd out on this stuff so long with you. Man, we are like-minded individuals, and I could go deep, deep, deep in the weeds. So tell you what, we're going to have to bring you back someday soon to talk more in detail. But for now, do you have any parting words of wisdom for our audience? And then share the best way that we can connect with you. And then we'll say goodbye. Yeah,
I would say the wisdom is plan your day before it starts. Have a plan. Say no. Execute on it and turn off all the distractions. When I'm working on something, a lot of times I'll just go into another room and I'll work on paper with pen because nothing's going to get in my way. No email, no cat video.
Great stuff. Thor, thank you so much for joining me on Hello Tech Pros. Before we go, hey, I forgot. Where can we connect with you? Where's your podcast? Where can we get a hold of you on social media? All that good stuff. Awesome. Well, thank you. The podcast you can find on Stitchers and iTunes. It's Peak Performers Podcast. You can find me on Facebook and Twitter at Thor Conklin. That's Conklin. Website is thorconklin.com. The email address, info@thorconklin.com.
real difficult up to this point. And again, if anybody has any questions about any of the stuff that was covered today, drop me a line, drop me an email. I'll be more than happy to get on the phone with you for a couple minutes and walk through some of these things with you. Be my honor. Also, we have a Facebook group. If you are interested, well, let me rephrase that. Not if you're interested, but if you're really committed to raising your game to the next level and becoming a peak performer, you can check out our Facebook group, which is Peak Performance Nation. And we also have a live event where we dive in for 4 days and we really go in deep on all these areas and really figure out, yes, you know what you want to do. Now let's figure out how to get it done and eliminating those obstacles. And that's Business Execution Summit, which we have about 4 times a year. And that's about it.
Fantastic. Thor, thank you so much for joining me on Hello Tech Pros today. Dude, I really value the fact, honestly, that you're a podcaster and that when I ask you questions, you can just roll with it. It saves me a lot of voice time. And that's always nice. So at the end of the day, I only have so much voice that I can, so much content that I can create. You laid out so many tips and tricks, actionable steps that our listeners can take. I will wrap all these up. I'll write them all up, put them in the show notes so that our audience doesn't miss those in case we were go through them pretty quickly. So you can go to hellotechpros.com/233 to get access to the show notes page for this episode. And Thor, thank you so much for joining me on the show.
It was my pleasure.
You bet. Tech Pros, if you are trying to be a peak performer, if you're trying to raise your game at the office and get a promotion or move up in your career to the next step of the career ladder, or if you're an entrepreneur and you're trying to get your business off the ground, but it feels like you're spinning your wheels, take a look at some of these early belief systems that you've put in place in the early parts of your life, just like Todd was talking about. Man, I have recently been really reevaluating a lot of things in my life because of the social anxiety that I've dealt with for many years and didn't know that I was dealing with it. I learned a lot about overcoming some of my anxieties and some of my fears and being more social and being more active in my community, being more active at work. And that made a tremendous difference. But now it's only after identifying some of these incorrect beliefs that I've had and I've suffered with over the years that have really allowed me to start becoming a peak performer. So if you have any interest in this area on social anxiety, I'm actually in the process of writing a book on the anxieties that technical professionals face. You can go check out an early chapter and stay tuned to how the progress of the book is coming by visiting anxietynerd.com. That's anxietynerd.com. And until next time, take care. The show notes page for this episode can be found at hellotechpros.com/233. Do you use Slack for team communication? Join the Hello Tech Pros Slack channel at hellotechpros.com/Slack. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review, subscribe to this channel, and check back tomorrow. This has been Productivity Tuesday, but tomorrow my featured guest and I are talking about leadership. Thursday, technology. Friday, people and communication. Saturday, entrepreneurship. Sunday, being unplugged. Monday, motivation. And then we do it all over again next Tuesday for productivity. And I'll talk to you tomorrow.